everyone. I'm excited to talk about this concept of missional family. Obviously, myself and my family have served over in East Africa, what many call the mission field, as missionaries for many years. But what I'd like to do tonight is I kind of want to expand our understanding of what mission means beyond the distant lands of traveling to some other continent or remote area, and help us to see that the mission field really is right in front of us. It's what God has placed in front of us, the opportunities that we have every day inside of our home and inside of our communities and in our neighborhoods. So you can see the title that I gave it. Missional family was what was given to me. I gave it a subtitle, not the mission or the family, because sometimes people can kind of fall into that. It's like one or the other. You know, it's if I'm going to have a family, well, then that means I'm not going to be able to be technically missional. And once again, because a lot of times when we start to talk about or use that word mission, it comes loaded. It comes as we carry some definitions that most of us are familiar with, and we think about missions as something that happens in a developing country or somewhere not where we're at. And so then we fall into those thinking of, okay, well, if I want to be missional, then I'm probably not going to be able to focus on the family aspect, or if I focus on the family, then I can't be missional. And so I want to push against that, some of those ideas or concepts, and push into being a missional family and not having to choose between the mission or the family. This is part 9 of our series, which we've called Making Marriage Work. This is 9 of 11, so we have 2 more in this midweek series. That should get us through the end of this year, and then we'll figure out what we're going to do as we enter into 2024. So I want to first begin with the biblical foundation and look at some passages. Now, this is not going to be, you're not going to find the phrase missional family in the Bible. It's not like we can book chapter verse, flip over, and here we go. But there are basic principles. There's concepts that we can extract and start to give some practical application for us living in the 21st century. So first, I want to look at the mission mandate. I think the mission mandate starts pretty much on page 1 in Genesis chapter 1, verse 28. God's command to humanity there is to be fruitful, to multiply, to fill the earth, and to subdue it. I think that mandate can be distilled down into 2 basic calls for us, these 2 missional tasks, if you will. One is to steward creation, or to rule over or have dominion over the creation, the place, the home that God's put us in. And the second is to spread God's image throughout the earth. So man has been created in the image of God, and he has also then commanded or mandated us to reflect that image, not only in the created order, but also to each other. Now, Jesus, I believe, amplifies this mandate and specifically commissions his disciples. Does somebody have their Bible? Could someone read Matthew 28, 19 through 20 for us?
Go therefore and make disciples of all the nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I commanded you. And lo, I am with you always, even to the end of the age.
Thanks, Brother Jeff. So Jesus commands his followers here to go and make disciples of all nations. So we have this mandate to be missionally minded. In other words, to think outside of our own selves and be able to express and carry not only a message, but the person of Jesus, and to reflect that image to the world around us. So family as God's design for mission. I think one thing that is very important, especially as we look at that initial Genesis story, is that God starts with a man and a woman, and they have a family. And as we look through even the story of Israel, God seems to continue to work through families. He calls Abraham out and he says, I'm going to make you into a great nation. Now his concept of nation there is not necessarily thinking about, okay, we've got to have strong military power, we've got to have big walls and borders, we've got to have good boundaries and control and laws and rules. What does he mean when he says, I'm going to make you into a great nation? It's a question. The nation of Israel. And how is that's going to be formed through the multiplication of? Right, a bunch of families, multiplying into a great nation. And this nation then was going to reflect his image or be his image in the society, in the world around them. So Deuteronomy 6:4 also gives us some principles here. It says, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. And these words which I command you today shall be in your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children. And you shall talk of them when you sit in your house, when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise up. You shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes." Has anybody got this on their eyes? Anything bound in your hands? "You shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates." So what we see here from Deuteronomy 6, it emphasizes the family's role in teaching God's commandments. Parents are instructed to diligently teach their children about God and the rhythms of daily life. So something I think is really important here from Deuteronomy, obviously we need to have these set times, but it really seems to indicate this, as you wake up, as you lie down, as you walk by the way, you should have them written on your doorpost, that it's kind of just throughout the rhythms of the family's life and throughout the rhythms of the family's day that these principles are being passed on to the children from one generation to the next. So obviously there's an intentionality behind it because we need to be diligent about it, but there's also something that should just become natural, that these are the things that we do. These commandments are the things that we speak of. We speak of God's laws. We have that value set, and these things naturally come out from us. Acts chapter 16, 31 through 34 is an example as well where we have the Philippian jailer's household, who becomes a testimony of God's mission through families. Now, obviously, there's a lot of details about this family that we don't know, but it does talk about him and his entire family or his household, whatever that meant, whoever that incorporated in his household. There was a concept of a family there in which God was doing a work and going to work through that family. Faithfulness in the small things. Oops. So another principle to kind of help us lay some of this biblical foundation at the beginning is Luke 16:10 reminds us, whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much. This principle applies to families, cultivating faith in their homes and being a light to those God places in their lives. That if we're responsible, if we're faithful in these little things, then we can be granted bigger or entrusted with much larger things as time goes on or as our families grow. So once again, the biblical foundation that we were looking at there is the mission mandate, which we looked at was the Genesis story there of God creating man in his own image and then being repeated in Jesus sending out his disciples to make disciples. The family as God's design for mission and faithfulness in the small things. Okay, so now I'd like to look just briefly. There's not a whole lot on this specific topic to look at, but the early church and the family. And I'm going to be making some inferences here. I think they're reasonable conclusions, reasonable inferences to make. But in the first few centuries of Christianity, the home was the epicenter of the church. I don't think that is anything controversial. They met from house to house. They broke bread from house to house. Romans 6, 3 through 5 talks about how they would meet in each other's homes. There's verse after verse that talks about, greet so-and-so and the church that meets in her house. So we can see that the home itself was an epicenter of the church in the early days of the believers. So the believers met in houses and modeled faith in everyday settings. Families opened their homes to travelers, refugees, and the marginalized, reflecting a missional mindset. Now, I don't know that they thought in the terms that we probably do today. They probably aren't thinking, okay, and having conversations like, okay, how can we be missionally minded? How do we have a mindset for mission? And I could be wrong. I just don't really foresee them having those conversations, because it feels like, when the gospel takes root in someone's lives and they see the way in which they're supposed to live based upon Jesus being the way, the truth, and the life, that it's something that just radically transforms not just their values, but their everyday decisions that they make and how they live their lives, how they structure their lives. And this just becomes normal to them. Not normal as in boring or mundane, but normal as in this is the way. There's no other way than this. And I can only imagine that this is just something that naturally was reflected in these homes and in these early Christian communities. And I think it's something that I appreciate about a lot of our communities, and hopefully we can continue to cultivate those types of mindsets. So getting into missional mindset, we can look at a few things like modern transportation and the mission field at our doorsteps. There's a lot of advantages that we have in the modern 21st century, in the day and age which we live, with transportation, communication, advantages that the early apostles and early disciples and evangelists and church planners in the early church didn't have. And so we can utilize those things. Historically, engaging with the nations required these crossing of oceans. Like, think of Adoniram Judson or Hudson Taylor or some of these really great missionary stories. I mean, it was a huge commitment to say, I'm going to go to Burma, right? I'm going to get on a ship. I'm going to leave my family, my country, my culture, my comfort. I'm going to get on a ship. If I survive the 6-month plus journey and get there, it's not like you're looking at the calendar saying, hey, I can't wait to be back home for the holidays to see family or something. Like, you're there. There's no going back and forth. Nowadays, we can get on a flight literally, for the most part, within 24 hours, give or take, obviously, with layovers and other circumstances. But you can pretty much be anywhere in the world within 24 hours. It's an amazing advancement in travel and technology. So, as I said, historically, engaging with the nations required this crossing of oceans, which was a great commitment. And today, global migration and modern transportation actually bring the nations to us. The concept of most countries only being made up of one particular ethnic group or the people of that particular culture or country is especially in the major cities throughout the world, is really a diminishing idea, because most major cities throughout the world are very diverse, with people from all different languages and countries and cultures and backgrounds. So Boston, for example, here is home to people from countless cultures and backgrounds. Even just here at the bridge where we teach English, I mean, we have Haitian students, we have students from Algeria, Morocco, Taiwan. Where else? I'm missing quite a few. Guinea, China, thank you. Colombia, yep, Brazil. I mean, there's probably a few more that I'm missing offhand. I probably should have listed them out ahead of time. But right there, that's just 8 different countries represented in those people who are present. So it's making the point that really the nations have in many ways come to us. So not that we shouldn't still think about reaching unreached people groups or going to the nations where it's necessary, but in a lot of ways they've come right to our own doorstep.
Well, in the Judson example, we had a Burmese man in this church for several years.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
Come full circle.
Mm-hmm. Okay, hospitality as mission. Hebrews 13 urges believers to practice hospitality, and it says that by doing so, some people have shown hospitality to angels without knowing it. It'd be nice, the knowing part, like to know afterwards, like you just entertained an angel. It's a fascinating verse, but it really highlights this important aspect of hospitality. This is a very important value in Christian communities, is this concept of giving a place to the stranger, to the wanderer, to the traveler, to the refugee, to the person who doesn't have a meal or a home or a place to lay their head for a night or 2 nights. This is a very important value and a very important and practical thing that we can still do in our day and age. So inviting others into our homes, whether it's neighbors or coworkers or immigrants, creates opportunities to share life and faith. I haven't read all of the book. I've actually listened to a few different podcasts where she's been a guest. But this Rosaria Butterfield, the gospel comes with a house key. So in her book, The Gospel Comes with a House Key, Rosaria Butterfield emphasizes the transformative power of hospitality and living out the gospel. Quote, radically ordinary hospitality shows the skeptical post-Christian world what authentic Christianity looks like. So there's a major opportunity with hospitality in our homes that we can truly show what Christianity practically looks like to people. I know that we want to be able to elegantly speak the gospel, to articulate the gospel to people around us. Those are good things to do. But if someone can actually see the practical nature of our faith being lived out in our homes, that's a huge testimony for the kingdom of God. Now, there are some challenges. I want to recognize that there are challenges, and we need to figure out and find some balance in these things. Balancing career and family and church, and then I put in brackets there mission, like the church, in its mission to make disciples, to be faithful, to be the hands and feet in Christ, and all that it encompasses there is what I mean by church and then mission. That can be challenging at times. I think if we took a survey here, we'd find that there's no shortage of trying to figure out how to balance the needs in your family, the needs at work, the needs within the church, depending on your position and place within the church. That might some of those categories might be greater or lesser, but nonetheless, it can be a balancing act at time. Families often feel stretched and thin by competing priorities. Yet viewing these priorities through a missional lens can transform them. And this may not be possible in every instance, but the way that we view these things and the way that we can try to intertwine them can help with some of this. Colossians 3:23 encourages us to work as though for the Lord. Our workplaces, our schools, our neighborhoods are mission fields. So when Brother Seth, not the Seth, when Brother Seth Matson is at MGH and he's working on the floor with other doctors and other medical staff and personnel, obviously there's a lot of other stuff that you have to talk about and medical lingo and patients and things that you have to discuss. But there's a way with your conduct and with your words and the way that you do or don't engage in some of the things that they engage in, that you can reflect Christ to them and show them practical Christianity. And I see a lot of people typing and writing, which is great. I'll send these out if you want. That way you're not like, oh, he just went to a new slide and I missed the last 4 words or whatever the case may be. I can send it out on our chat. So sometimes it can feel a little bit like this picture here on the left, where you've got family, career, church, and you've got, each of them is a rope pulling in different directions, and you're not sure, you're trying to balance it all. You're trying to hold all the rope together, and it doesn't work. And the way I'd like us to try to think about it is more like these like a Venn diagram or these circles here on this other side. And actually this is something when I was moving back from East Africa, when I was moving from Uganda to come back to Boston here, I knew that I was going to have to figure out how to balance some of these things. And I actually had several opportunities for employment. And one of the things that I did was I actually drew circles, and I put a few different things, but these were three. I put church, family, and career in three of those circles. I had a few other ones as well, but those were my three main ones. And I kind of wrote out the different job opportunities, and I kind of placed like a dot on the circle, and working for this. If I took this job, okay, well, this really answers the career question, and financially we'll be okay. But the problem is, it's distance-wise. I'm going to have to commute a little bit, so it's going to be more time away from the family. Also, because of the distance, my family can't be as involved because it's a field that you wouldn't typically have children at the workplace or whatever the case may be. Also, it's not directly connected to the church in any way, which is not necessarily a bad thing or a good thing in that instance, but it just doesn't really, there's no overlap, so it's kind of in its own category. And then I'd put another job in there, and it's like, okay, well, this one is close to home, so the ability to, the commute is short. Also, my family can be involved and come into it. Also, I can be missional in it, and I can incorporate the church and its mission, plus my own personal mission in those things. And so then it's like, I think I'm going to lean in that direction because it's causing some of those things to come together. And so it's kind of more in that middle. So that's just some way to think about, choices in the future when you're making decisions for career or school or whatever the case may be. Is are these things bringing me further or away from family and church? And how can I, if I need to make this decision, is there ways I can try to bring everything along with me or incorporate them? So the mission here and now. So opportunities in the Boston area. As I mentioned earlier, Boston is, the diversity is itself a mission field. Families can engage with international students, with refugees, with immigrant communities. I mean, I don't know that any of us had on our radar trying to do a church plant in Afghanistan. Well, however, the crisis that happened in Afghanistan several years ago literally brought, hundreds and thousands of people from Afghanistan right here to our doorstep. Sitar is one of those that still comes around the community. There's a handful of people that our community here has been able to engage with from from Afghanistan. Consider practical ways to connect. So volunteering at ESL programs. This might be a little bit of a plug. I have some opportunities if you're interested. Monday night specifically. But volunteering at ESL programs, inviting neighbors over for dinner to your house is a great way to get to know people, build relationship, or supporting local ministries. There's opportunities like I think it's called Bread of Life.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. The Bread of Life, which is up the road. There's opportunities there. There's other warming shelters. There's a lot of great other local ministries that may not directly be connected to Followers of the Way that you can get involved in to begin to network and build relationship. Living missionally as families. So make your home a place of worship. Practice family devotions, prayer, and scripture reading, and inviting guests into this rhythm occasionally. Now, obviously, it probably isn't going to be the best dynamic in the family to regularly have visitors or people be a part of that, because sometimes there might be specific things as a family you're talking through or working through or studying that you really want to be able to go deep. And if you have a guest there, your interest, or not your interest, your attention is going to be divided some to your guest. But we've been able to do this with some students here at the Bridge. We've have a gentleman that we had over one evening, and we did our family devotions, and he was very, the way he was sitting there, and you could just tell he was listening, taking it all in. Afterwards, when we were done, it was night. It was still light outside and warm, and so we went on a nice walk, and he started asking some questions. And so he was able to get a glimpse at, wow, this is something that is central and important in this family's life, and they've actually invited me into that. So the ability to actually invite people into those rhythms in our home. And teach your children to see everyday interactions as opportunity to reflect Christ's love. So whether that's with their siblings, or whether that's with playmates at when we have our fellowship gatherings, or whether that's maybe a friend or someone in the neighborhood. Let's not do the pencil sharpening. So being a missional family is not about uprooting your life to travel across the globe. Although it may consist of that. I'm not in making that statement. I'm not saying that isn't something that maybe an opportunity God is opening up for some of you. Obviously, myself and my family have done that, have uprooted and traveled across oceans and planted ourselves in a different country and culture. So I see that there is great value in those things. But being missional, that doesn't make us missional. Packing up and moving to Kenya or moving to Uganda doesn't automatically all of a sudden make us missional if we weren't missional already. The going somewhere and landing in a new place isn't what makes you missional. What makes you missional is recognizing those opportunities and making the most of the opportunities God gives you. So it's about faithfully living out God's mission wherever you are. Whether that's Malden, whether that's Medford, whether that's Everett, whether that's the greater Boston area, whether that's in your place of work. The mission field begins at home and extends to the people and places that are in your path. So my hope is for us to be families who faithfully reflect Christ in the small things. Remember, being faithful in those small things so that we can be faithful in the greater things. So being faithful in those small things and seize the opportunities to engage the world He has brought right to our doorstep. So I want to recap just a few of the practical application things that were sprinkled in through some of those points there that we talked about. Integrate mission into daily life. So view career, family, and church as interconnected, not as separate categories. Find ways to overlap these areas for a unified purpose. And sometimes that overlapping may not be possible, but it can still be missional. Even if you can't get it to overlap with family and church, you can still be missional in each of those areas of life. Practice radical hospitality. Open your home to neighbors, co-workers, friends, and share your family's rhythm of faith, prayer, and worship with others. And I think this is something that a lot of us do here in our community. It's something I'm thankful for, is that I think we have a great culture of hospitality, and I want to continue to cultivate that and encourage us to continue to not only grow in that area, not grow because we're not doing well, but to continue to grow because I think it's a strength that we have and we should continue to use it. Engage with your community. Get involved in local opportunities such as volunteering at ESL programs like the Bridge. Mentoring students or supporting refugee families. Be faithful in small things. Cultivate faith practices in your home. Daily devotions, prayer, Bible reading, and invite others to witness and participate those things. Leverage diversity as an opportunity. Sometimes people can see diversity as a scary thing, as a threat, but we want to see it as an opportunity. Recognize the mission field in your neighborhood. Build relationships with people from different cultural backgrounds. Model missional living for your children. Teach your children to see their daily interactions as opportunities to show Christ's love and to live out the gospel. And then pray for guidance and wisdom. Consistently seek God's direction in balancing your priorities and making your home a light for the gospel. So I put some discussion questions here. We can open it up if there are any questions. I thought it would be great to make sure we had some time to have some question and response time. Some of the questions I put here: one, how can you and your family begin to see your home as a mission field if you don't already? What practical steps can you take this week to reflect Christ's love to someone in your community? What challenges do you face in balancing family, work, and mission, and how can you address them? And how might the diversity in your neighborhood or city present unique opportunities for engaging in God's mission? And that's all I've got. So I'll open it up from there. Like I said, we can